Well guys, it's been 1 month since I unboxed this 2023 Sur-ron Ultra Bee, and it's time to do the 1 month review. I hope you're ready for this, guys, because I have a lot to say about this bike. If you guys are new to the channel, every single time I buy a new bike, I take it out for about a month and get a really good feel of how the bike runs and how it operates, its pros, its cons. That way I can give you guys a very honest and real opinion from someone who's actually ridden the bike. I don't think you can take one of these bikes out of the box and just ride it around for a couple minutes and give everyone a good idea of how it works. I believe it takes some time, so I always do a 1 month review of the bikes, and this is mine of the Sur-ron Ultra Bee. And the footage that you're watching right now, guys, is of a hare scramble that we took the bike to last week in Morrison, Illinois. We finished 3rd place in our class, so it was a great day for riding. I was really impressed with the bike. But before we get into all that, the first thing I want to talk about with this bike is the settings and the customization that you can do to it. So one of the features on this bike that I found really intriguing is the ability to adjust certain settings on the bike to fit your personal style of riding, something my previous bikes didn't have. I used to own a Sur-ron Light Bee and a Talaria Sting, and those two bikes were great, but all they had as far as settings you could change were sport mode and eco mode, or high power mode and low power mode. But the Ultra Bee comes outfitted with quite a few more settings to fit more to your riding style or more to the terrain that you're riding. To give you guys a quick rundown of what those settings are, you can adjust the safety features on the bike. For example, if you pull the brakes in, it'll kill the motor. You could turn that on and off. You can also change whether or not the bike will shut off if you accidentally crash it or tip it over. You can adjust the throttle sensitivity of the bike, so it can be more touchy or it can have a little bit more play in it. And my personal favorite is the built-in reverse button that you can click on the fly to get out of some sticky situations, which I found to be quite useful. There are some other settings that you can do on the bike, but overall, I am very pleased with the settings that they have put in this bike. I think every single one of them are useful, and at the same time, it's really user-friendly when you set up your bike. I've ridden a lot of electric bikes where there's just so many settings that you can play with, and all of them affect the way that the bike feels when you're riding it. And in my opinion, it kind of just overcomplicates things because it's a lot harder to get the bike to ride the way that you want it to when there's so many little buttons and stuff that you can toy with. Sur-ron did a great job with these settings because they basically made the key things that people want to adjust, and you can adjust those within certain parameters that the bike is designed for. So again, it's super user friendly, really easy to understand, so I gotta give these settings an A+. Next up, guys, I want to talk about the brakes and the suspension on this thing, neither of which I heard about prior to buying the bike, so I didn't really know what to expect going into it. It's rocking a KKE front motocross fork, and then in the rear it's a Surron branded full-size motocross suspension. And I gotta say, right out of the box, it feels amazing. They have this thing really dialed in, mostly for single track. I took it on some motocross tracks too, and I didn't bottom out at all. It feels really playful, more so for trail riding. It's a little bit on the softer side, but like I said, they have this thing dialed in really well. Of course, you can go and get really high dollar motocross suspension that will fit on the bike, that will be better than this, but normally I upgrade my suspension, but I don't think I'm going to touch it at all on this bike. It feels really good set up like this. Having full-size motocross calipers on a bike this size is fantastic. I can full lock both my wheels with one of my fingers. I've ridden it about 150 miles so far. The only thing that I'd say is that the pads inside the calipers I think are wearing faster than normal, so when those pads wear out, I'm probably going to go with a little bit high dollar brake pads, but the calipers feel great. Tons of stopping power. If you're coming from a Sur-ron Light Bee or a Talaria Sting, those run mountain bike suspension and mountain bike brakes. This will be night and day for you. I'm much more confident than I was on any of my bikes with this suspension and especially these brakes. So another A+ for the suspension and the brakes on this thing. And really quick guys, before we move forward, I want to comment on a couple other little things like the geometry of the bike. We have a full-size motocross seat on here, which makes it a lot more comfortable to ride, especially if you're coming from a Sur-ron Light Bee or Talaria. It's just leaps and bounds better. I'm able to shift my weight around the entire bike. The swing arm is much longer, so going up hills I'm way more confident because I don't feel like I'm going to flip the bike over. I always felt like I was kind of leaning over the bars, but this bike feels really good to ride. The only thing that I do not like about it, or that I would have preferred that they'd done different, is the wheel setup. They have a 1919 wheel setup on here, which is okay. It handled this stuff fine, but they, in my opinion, they should have shipped the bikes with a 1821 wheel setup, which is proper enduro setup for dirt bikes. It would have given you a little bit more torque, made going over roots and logs and going in sand much easier. Would have brought the height of the seat up just slightly. So that's my only complaint, but out of the box, the bike with the 1919 still feels good. And last but not least guys, my opinion on the power and the range of the stock Sur-ron Ultra Bee. So power-wise, the stock bike comes out at 12.5 kilowatts. Over the years of riding these electric bikes, I've learned that the sweet spot for riding an electric bike, a smaller electric bike in the woods like this, is in between 12 kilowatts and 14 kilowatts. So I was pretty darn excited when Surron said, hey, we're going to put this bike out, it's going to run at 12.5 kilowatts. I was like, that's perfect. This bike power level is spot on for trail riding. And there are faster bikes out there. We can take the Surron Storm Bee, for example, runs at 22 kilowatts, so almost double what this bike is pushing right now. But I wouldn't be able to ride any faster through the woods with the Surron Storm Bee, even though it has a lot more power, than I would on this Ultra Bee. Because when you're going through the woods, you don't need a crazy amount of power. You need agility, and you need a good amount of power. And the 12.5 kilowatts that this bike runs out feels perfect for the bike. It has plenty of power to do anything that I would ever come across on any trails. They have the phase amps up on here a lot, so it has a lot of torque. In fact, it has so much torque that I have not gotten the whole shot on any of my races on this thing. But it's not uncontrollable. So the power level on the Ultra Bee, A+, baby. And lastly, my opinion on the range for the Ultra Bee is really good. When the bike was first unveiled, we looked at it and Surron claimed it would get 87 miles for a charge, which would be the absolute best case scenario. When you're riding like this, I say cut that range number in half, and that's much more likely what you're going to get. So I guessed around 40 miles, which turns out was a really good guess. The max range I've ridden this thing on a trip is 38 miles riding like this, and that number for a stock battery is really good. That's a little over 2 hours of riding. I think that they could have made the battery a little bit bigger if they wanted to, but overall it's a solid range that the bike comes with stock. We'll give it a B+. So guys, that's gonna be my 1 month review of the Sur-ron Ultra Bee. An almost perfect trail bike. It does have a couple things that I would change about it, but guys, right out of the box, it is freaking amazing. I'm so happy that I went with this bike versus the Storm Bee, because I had the Storm Bee in my cart and I just didn't check out because I was so like torn up about it. But I'm really happy that I went with the Ultra Bee. It's just perfectly set up for trail riding like this. If you guys are on the fence about whether to buy a Sur-ron Light Bee or a Talaria Sting or the Sur-ron Ultra Bee, I would 100% suggest buying the Ultra Bee if you're going to be riding trails similar to this. If you wanted something a little more playful, planning on riding it on the road a little bit, I would say go with the Light Bee or the Talaria Sting, because you will not be able to get away with riding this thing on the sidewalk. Full on dirt bike right here. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Leave a comment down below, tell me what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.